In King of the Hill, getting yourself into the AO can be a bit problematic sometimes, but if you've got a bit of basic knowledge about the vehicles that are available, you can make life a lot easier for yourself. In this video, I aim to provide you with the basic information you'll need to get yourself in and out of the AO using air vehicles. So this video is a follow-up to my ground vehicle guide that I did a few weeks ago, but this one's obviously all about the air vehicles. And again, this is infantry only King of the Hill. Everything that I mention in here is true for the vehicle servers as well. You just need a little bit of additional information to fly on those vehicle servers, where you've got to watch out for all the other air vehicles that can lock onto you and things like that. But it is possible to get yourself and other people into the AO fairly easily without too much skill, in fact. Like I said at the start, you just need a bit of basic knowledge about the vehicles, and that should be enough to safely get you into the AO. Now, ideally, if there's any decent pilots around, you want to get into their air vehicle if you can, but in my experience, decent pilots are very few and far between. And what makes a decent pilot in King of the Hill is someone that can get you into the AO without dying. Their aerial acrobatic ability is completely irrelevant. You just need someone that can do a decent combat landing without crashing. Usually people just show off and end up crashing a helicopter, but what shows high skill in King of the Hill is avoiding the incoming fire, being able to deal with incoming fire when it does come in, and getting everybody into the AO without dying. Even the best pilots make occasional mistakes and kill everyone. It's very easily done in this game, but when it happens to you, you're a passenger in the helicopter and you get killed, it's extremely annoying. I think we're going to be alright. Bloody hell.
Nice.
That was good flying. Thanks, dude. Nice flying. And as I said, most people that fly in this game, they're just not that good at flying, unfortunately. But you don't actually need that much skill to be able to pull it off.
Whoops.
Just don't try and do any crazy stunts and you'll make life a lot easier for yourself and your passengers. Of course, the best way to get into the AO is to use the spawn truck if one is available. It'll get you in there faster than anything else and without spending any money either, but a lot of the time that's just not an option. And in such times, you're probably going to have to try and get yourself into the AO. But let's have a look at the list of air vehicles that are available. You'll see even in infantry only, sometimes on some servers you do get armed helicopters. But as you can see, they are usually deactivated until there's enough people on the server, if you are on a server that does allow armed helicopters. But most of the time I use the aeroplane. This is the fastest air vehicle to get you into the AO. The only reason you would not use an aeroplane is you can only buy one every few minutes. So after you bought one, there's a cooldown before you can get another one. And because of that cooldown, you can't just spam aeroplanes. But what I like to do is fly in at a reasonable height, shut off the engine as I get to around 2 kilometers, maybe just a bit under 2 kilometers. And I like to parachute out fairly low. The higher that you are when you parachute out, the more of a target you are, unfortunately. And in King of the Hill, people do regularly get shot while they're parachuting. I like to come down to around between 200 and 150 meters to jump out, though this is quite low, and you'll be coming down pretty fast, and this will help you to avoid incoming enemy fire, but it is very risky. It does take a bit of practice, and you sort of need to learn about the sort of height that you can get away with jumping out the airplane. The orientation of the aircraft just as you jump out comes into factor as well, so say there the nose of the airplane was pointing down just a little bit and that made me come out the airplane really, really fast. Whoa, gee crap. Jumped out a bit too low. I'm alive.
Take it. Totally planned. Well, you have never landed so quickly, have you?
That's probably the quickest, yeah, I've survived, yeah.
Perfect. When you actually took damage.
Yeah, I had to heal myself. But there was a proper base jump, that was. Point break moment. Okay, so let's check out some of the helicopters that are available. The first one that you might be flying is the Mohawk. This is because Mohawks spawn at the base. So sometimes you'll be able to pick up a Mohawk for free and fly it from the base. However, if you're going to take a helicopter that's spawned at the base, you might want to see if any friendlies get in before you fly off. You know, don't completely waste the team's asset. But once you've taken off, you want to get as high as you possibly can before you've left the safe zone. This makes it easier to spot enemy aircraft as you're going in, and also you can just get up really high and then dip the nose down to build up a bit of speed. Raise your landing gear if you got any, and of course lower the gear again when you want to come in for a landing. But what I like to do with this big ass helicopter is come right into the AO, do a backflip just over where I want to land to kill all my speed, kill all my forward momentum, then come in for a landing and try not to fly too straight and too slow because it makes you a bit of an easy target. But this Mohawk is fast. It does have a ramp that you can lower at the back and people in the back can actually shoot from the ramp. But this helicopter is like a bus, so it's very, very heavy, so it means it's not particularly maneuverable, and you do need to touch down very, very gently. But it can hold a lot of people, so it can be very, very useful. As you can see, my piloting skills are not particularly good, but no, I was still able to land the helicopter without dying then, and I can still get myself and other people into the AA without dying, as long as I don't try anything too crazy. The easiest way to practice flying is to go into the editor, load up the map, whichever map you want. Obviously King of the Hill is all Altis. Right, the first thing you want to do when you're on the editor, you press M to go between the map view and to go between the 3D view. And what I would do is go to where I want to fly. The airport is a good option, as it's all flat ground, makes it a bit easier to practice flying. I then right click on the runway and choose go here. The camera is now on the runway, press M again and you can see that we're now on the runway. On the top right you can see the option to click between the 3 teams, and there's also civilian teams as well, and you can see all the vehicles that are available. All you've got to do is drag the helicopter onto the screen and press play. Simple as that. That will automatically put you in the pilot seat of the air vehicle. I fly with just the keyboard and I've changed my keys a bit. I'm using the WASD keys and the arrow keys, and I'm using the Q and E keys to raise and lower the height of the vehicle. As you can see there, collective raise and collective lower. I've got Q and E set. And for the plane controls, I've got Q and E for increase and decrease thrust. When I first get into the helicopter, I switch the engine on either by using the mouse roller menu or just holding Q. Once you've fired up the engine, you want to keep your finger on the collective decrease, to decrease your altitude so the helicopter doesn't fly off while the blades are going around. That'll give your teammates a chance to get into the helicopter before you take off. If you don't do that, the vehicle might take off by itself unexpectedly. Eventually you're going to take off and just mess around with the keys, just see what does what. And it's much better to practice in the editor like this than it is to practice in game with people actually in the aircraft with you. The Hummingbird's a good option to practice flying, as it's such a manoeuvrable aircraft. You'll very quickly get used to the controls flying something like this, and it's a bit easier to transfer the controls to a heavier aircraft than it is to learn in a heavier aircraft and transfer the controls to a lighter aircraft, I find. But the Hummingbird is also probably the most popular helicopter in the game, is the one that I would generally recommend using. It's one of the cheaper aircraft in the game, but despite its low cost, the small size makes it harder for enemies to spot. The low noise level also makes the helicopter more stealthy, people can't hear it coming from as far away, and it's extremely manoeuvrable. The manoeuvrability of this aircraft makes it the best option for the quick insertions and extractions to and from the AO. As I said with the other air vehicles, first thing you want to do is get a bit of height before you've left the safe zone. You can see in the top left, I've not even left the safe zone yet. Get really high before you leave the safe zone. Dip the nose down and then you can go forward much quicker. That will give you a lot more forward momentum, helping you to avoid the incoming enemy helicopters. You've got to watch out for enemies trying to shoot you from... They can shoot you from the bench of the Hummingbird if you're being followed by enemy Hummingbirds. Friendlies can of course shoot from the bench on your Hummingbird as well. And you quite often get people shooting pretty big guns from the side of the bench, doing what's called a redneck pawnee. Although if you're going to do that, you need to communicate between the people shooting and the guy flying. The main downside with the Hummingbird is it's very exposed to enemy fire. There's no armor or anything like that. Even very small arms fire can totally kill the helicopter itself, as well as take out all the people on board the helicopter while it's in the air. Right, now when you parachute out, you want to try and find somewhere safe, somewhere where there's friendlies. Probably not go straight into the priority, not unless the priority is owned by your own friendlies. You can see I was avoiding the enemy spawn truck there. I could have tried to go straight for it and destroy it, but there's obviously going to be enemies spawning straight out of that spawn truck, so it would be pretty dangerous to go right there. Once you get down on the ground, try and land safely. Again, I'm using just the keyboard to fly with the parachute. Try and touch down behind cover and get yourself into hard cover as quickly as possible, such as a building. Alright, let's have a look at the Taru. This is another one of the cheaper aircraft. This is a smaller heli compared to some of the helis in the game, but it can carry quite a lot of people for the size of the aircraft. It doesn't have much armor for a people carrier though, so that's something to take into consideration. Passengers can be shot from out of the vehicle pretty easily. There's two versions, one with the bench and one with the transport. People can shoot from the benches on the bench version, and the transport version has an enclosed area around the people that are in the back. It takes less people, but it's got a little bit more armor. Okay, another helicopter is the Orca. The Orca is very maneuverable, although this is another one with low armor. The pilot can be shot quite easily, unfortunately, through the windows of the cockpit, and this is quite a loud helicopter for its size. Right, the next one we'll look at is the Huron. Huron's a very large aircraft. It's very fast and it is very stable for its size, but it's not very maneuverable. And of course the large size makes it much easier for enemies to spot, but this helicopter is pretty strong. It can sometimes take 2 Morse rockets to take it out of the sky. Okay, this is the Hellcat. This is very fast and very agile, but again it's quite a loud helicopter, so the enemies are going to see it coming. You've got to make use of that speed if you're going to use it. and it does not actually have that much armor either, so again that's another one in which even the pilots can be shot out the helicopter with the small arms fire, so you've got to watch out for that. And with all helicopters, as I was saying, get as high as you possibly can before you leave the safe zone. Helps you to keep an eye out for those enemy aircraft. Right, let's have a look at the Blackfish. This is the most difficult one to fly in the game, the most difficult air vehicle to fly in my opinion. It's VTOL, which means that it combines the flexibility of a heli with the speed of a fixed-wing jet with its vertical takeoff system and angleable propeller engines. This vehicle is very strong. It can take 4 or more Morse rockets to take it out sometimes, but it has very low maneuverability and it's extremely hard to land. But if you actually can land it, it's probably the best air vehicle in the game for defensive insurgents in my opinion, as it's so tough. It takes so much to take it out of the sky. But enemies can see and hear it from very far away. But the way to fly this thing is when you first get in it, it's going to go forward by itself if you're not careful. What I like to do is turn auto vectoring on and use the mouse roller options to increase or decrease vectoring. Increase points the propeller straight up in the air, and decrease moves them down again so you can go forward like a normal aeroplane. Best thing to do, lift off vertically by increasing the vectoring, dip the nose to build up a bit of speed, and then bit by bit decrease the vectoring to point the propellers forward. Once you pick up a bit of speed, this thing does go very fast and it's really difficult to lose that speed again unless you're an extremely skilled pilot. You can actually do some really crazy maneuvers with this thing, but you want to look elsewhere to get guides on how to do that, because I'm not so good at flying, and this thing, like I said, is the most difficult one to fly. But if you're going to fly forwards using the propellers, as you get close you might want to parachute out. Trying to kill your speed and then land the thing is extremely difficult. As with the Mohawk, you have to touch down really gently because the thing's so big, but because it's so big it makes it very difficult to judge just how fast you're going, especially in third person view. You might have better luck by not decreasing the vectoring too much and mostly just flying the thing like a helicopter. On some servers you can get the Ghosthawk. The Ghosthawk is very quiet for its size. It's very fast and very maneuverable and stable for its size as well, although it's not actually any tougher than the normal Mohawk, but they're equipped with some pretty heavy guns. Although you can do a lot of damage with these guns, it's much easier to hit things if the helicopter's standing still, but you really don't want to be standing still too much in this helicopter because it makes you too much of an easy target for enemies. Especially when you've got people out there with long range weapons, they can shoot you out of the heli pretty easily, so ideally the pilot wants to keep moving. Well, I hope you find the information useful. Thanks for watching, thanks for liking and subscribing. See you next time, take it easy.